So this is a complicated part of electrolysis. It's what happens when you dissolve something in water and then electrolyze it. So if you do it with, let's say, copper chloride over here, no problem. Everything would be fine because we can forget about what happens with the water, because what happens is the copper goes towards the negative electrode, just like we learned earlier on, collects 2 electrons, becomes copper, and then the chlorine goes to a positive electrode, gives off 2 electrons and becomes chlorine gas. So that seems fine. But when you get something that is more reactive, a metal that's more reactive than hydrogen on the reactivity series. So if we look down at the reactivity series down here, then there's hydrogen. Copper is less reactive than hydrogen, so it just behaves the way that we have been learning it behaves as it was. So, basically, it gets a lot more complicated not loads more complicated, but a little bit more complicated if the metal is more reactive than hydrogen. If it's more reactive than hydrogen, in any case, whenever you dissolve something in water, the water molecule dissociates into these 2 different ions anyway. So now you've got these 4 ions. In the case of copper chloride, you don't even need to know about these ones because they just don't really do anything. But once you get something more reactive than hydrogen, then what happens is it's the hydrogen that appears at the negative electrode rather than the sodium. And so essentially you have these hydrogen ions inside the solution, and they would remove the charge and by collecting these electrons and then bond together to form a hydrogen molecule. So we can call this process discharging because the charges have been removed. So it's like the opposite of ionizing. And then what happens is this sodium ion that didn't go towards the negative electrode bonds towards the OH ion here. So essentially you've got on the left, on the negative electrode, you've got this half equation going on. Then on the right one, you've got the chlorine, 2 chlorine ions going towards that. And then they form a chlorine molecule and give the 2 electrons to that anode, to the positive electrode. And the remaining 2, the sodium and the OH minus ion, bond together to form sodium hydroxide. So like this. So a little bit more complicated if you dissolve more reactive metal salts or more reactive metal compounds in water.